Shalom, everybody. Welcome to this week's Journey Through Torah. This week is Parsha Ki Tisa. Ki Tisa is when you elevate. There's a lot of really amazing, good insights into this Parsha. And, as normal, we can't cover everything. But as we go through the Torah portions, we want to reveal the heart of Yahweh for his people. We want to reveal Yeshua to us, and that Yeshua is throughout the entirety of the Torah. He is the Word that was made flesh, that was given among us, and we need to learn how to walk with him. We need to learn how to walk in his ways. And what does this mean for us? And we'll go through some examples in this today, some things we're going to cover, because we're given some directions on life today. On as important as it is, Yahweh says, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be revealed to you, right? Well, and it's saying seek first, we think this is like, all the time, every day, everything, right? Which, it should be the very central theme of our life. But at what point do we have to stop to refocus back on why? You with me? It's seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. That's just the things of life, things that we need for life and whatever. But it is birthed out of this relationship. Just like when Yeshua called his people, he said, follow me. This is relationship, okay? And he was calling people to return to him, to come back and follow him. He wasn't trying to start a new religion. He was trying to call people back to the ways that they didn't know how to walk in because of everything else that it was polluted with. And in this, coming to the Torah, when Yahweh called people out of Mitzrayim, he called them out, he redeemed them, brought them through the water, mikvah, baptism, brought them to the mountain to teach them his instructions. So how to walk with him. It's called sanctification. It's called daily life. It's called discipleship, and all these things that we're looking at. Now, what has happened this point forward? We are in the middle of building the tabernacle, building the Mishkan, building a place for Yahweh to dwell, knowing full well that the intent was never, to confine Yahweh to this small tent. That's not it at all. The tabernacle is showing us a pattern of what is in the heavens, and showing us the pattern of what we are supposed to be, showing us that we are supposed to carry the presence of Yahweh with us. So in everything that we do, the focus is Yahweh is within me, and how we approach him and how we honor him and all the things that we do. But as important as this is, we still have further instructions for us on this, okay? So setting up some of the things we're going to look at is Shabbat. Now, why is this in the middle of building the tabernacle? I mean, we're talking about lifting up Ki Tisa, to lift up, taking a census. We're talking about atonement. We've talked about this before in the past, and this is the Parsha with the golden calf and all these things. But in the midst of building the tabernacle and atonement and the golden calf, right in between that, Yahweh gives us very specific and direct instructions. It's about Shabbat. See, so it causes us to get into some questions. Who is Shabbat for? Yeshua said that Shabbat was created for man, not man for Shabbat. What does he mean by this? Yeshua also said that he was the Lord of the Shabbat. He was the Lord of the Sabbath. What does he mean by that? So some things we're going to look at here today, okay? So as we get into this, let's approach and find the heart of the Father, okay? Because we can get so busy that we forget why. Like building the tabernacle. The people were charged to build the tabernacle. Yahweh specifically told them, build me the tabernacle. Build a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. And we've covered this before, where he says among them doesn't literally just mean as their next door neighbor. Literally, he's saying that I may dwell within them, within their communities and within their hearts, within them. So as important as this is, a direct thing from Yahweh himself, build this tabernacle. As important as that is, he tells them on Shabbat, stop. But even though you're building the tabernacle, when Shabbat comes, stop it. Why? Because we can lose focus. We can lose focus of we're building the tabernacle, but we have to have that relationship with Yahweh above everything else. He has to be in it, right? And that focus is for what purpose? That we can carry all these things that Yahweh is telling us. It's not a matter of on Shabbat we come to Yahweh and we forget everything that he's taught us up to this point. No, it's that as we come to him, we now learn to rest in the things that he has given us. We now learn to walk in the things that we have given us and the understanding that we have. and seek this restorative relationship with him on Shabbat. And that's what it was given for. It's not just stopping from your work, guys. It's not just stopping to build it. It's a time to focus on the why we do everything else the 6 days. See? Because Shabbat doesn't just mean okay, it's don't work. Shabbat is a cease. It is a cease and desist. It is a rest. Rest means stop working. Okay? So it's the stopping that, and then why? What's the purpose? Well, if you're not working, what are you doing? You're pursuing relationship. You are reading. You're gathering in a community. You are seeking Yahweh. This is personal time for you and Yahweh, and a time to corporately come together between you and Yahweh. Consider when they were at the mountain. Well, when they were in the mountain, Yahweh only told them just to stop from their working here. But guys, they were already gathered together as one unit together. Okay, so that part of being together and gathering together is still a vital part of Shabbat and the purpose for that. So let's go back and let's take a look at some things. All right. So Exodus 31 verses 12 to 17. Sorry guys, I kind of got this little eyelash. It's bothering me. So Exodus 31, 12 to 17 says, Adonai says to Moshe, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, verily my Shabbats you shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am Yahweh that sanctifies you. Where it says, verily my Sabbaths, the word is ach. Ach is an interesting word. It's just 2 letters, ach, but it means truly or surely or as for you or but or whatever it is. It's like, so do this, but above all, keep my Sabbaths. This is what I want you to do, but don't forget this. It's kind of like when Yeshua says, you've forgotten the weightier matters of the Torah. You need to be doing the weightier matters of the Torah, justice, peace, righteousness, all these things, the weightier matters of the Torah, mercy, all of this, without forgetting the other things. It's not trading one for the other. It's saying, this is what I want you to do, but in the process of doing this, don't forget to do this. All right. And this is what Yahweh is instructing us for, to stop and to refocus back to him. Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 12 says, moreover, I gave them my Sabbaths to be a sign between me and them, that they might know that I am Yahweh that sanctifies them. That you would know that it is Yahweh who sanctifies you. Understand, the keeping Shabbat, it's a sign, and he says that you will know Yahweh sanctifies you. So part of this surrendering ourselves to Yahweh is admitting we will stop from the creating, from the working and cease and the doing all of that, and we will enter into this time in faith, because it is you who sanctifies me. We are acknowledging when we keep Shabbat with the right heart, we are acknowledging that it is Yahweh that sets us apart, not our own strength, not the working the 6 days of our hands, not whatever we can build, not whatever we can do, not whatever talents or gifts that he has given us that we're using. It is him alone who sanctifies us. And that is what Shabbat is to remind us of. And it is a sign. The word sign is something that is visible. It's something that is seen. It's not something that's secret or quiet. It's something that is visible. It's something that is seen. Much like where you would wear a wedding ring as a sign of covenant. See, the Shabbat is a sign of covenant that we will surrender ourselves to Yahweh. Ezekiel 20 verses 18 and 20 says, instead I warn the young people among them, do not keep the laws your ancestors made. Do not follow their customs or defile yourselves with their idols. I am Yahweh your God. Obey my laws and commands. Make the Sabbath a holy day so that it will be a sign of the covenant we made and will remind you I am Yahweh your God. What he was telling here in Ezekiel is he was telling even the young ones, he's saying your fathers had created traditions outside of my word. He didn't say, forget the traditions of your fathers and forget my word. I'm doing something different with you. He said to keep the traditions from your fathers has polluted my word. I don't want you to do that. I want you to do my word. I want you to return to me and keep my word and walk with me in my ways. So in your process of returning to Yahweh and keeping his ways, he says, keep Shabbat, honor Shabbat. So the Sabbath, it's like you work 6 days and then in the 7th day, you cease working. Okay. But it doesn't mean that you do nothing, because Yahweh still has things for us. The Shabbat it's a sign, but it's also a sanctuary in the midst of time. See, the Mishkan is a sanctuary in the midst of a place, space, if you will. It is in the midst of a physical spot. But the Shabbat is a sign of a sanctuary in time. It is a time when we pull away from the working of our hands, the doings of the things that we do, and we focus on building the relationship with Yahweh and his people and his kingdom and all of these things. We're not doing the physical building, we're doing the spiritual building. Okay? So the tabernacle was a sanctuary in space, much as Shabbat is a sanctuary in time. The tent of meeting is called the Ohel Moed, the tent of meeting. But the appointed times of Yahweh are called Moedim, including Shabbat. It's called a Moed. And so both are given us specific appointments from Yahweh to meet with his people. Another example of this, the Mishkan is a tent of meeting, and Shabbat as a meeting in time. The Mishkan is a holy place with defined limits and borders. Shabbat is a holy time with defined borders. The Mishkan was to be holy and undefiled. Israel was to prepare themselves before they enter into it, much like Shabbat. We are told to prepare ourselves for Shabbat and to keep it holy. We are to prepare in the 6 days, and on the 6th day, called Preparation Day, we prepare to enter into Shabbat. We prepare to enter into that rest. Because if we do not prepare to enter into it, we will not enter into it. Okay? And then another point here, once you enter, you would expect to meet with Yahweh in the Mishkan, much like Shabbat. When you enter into Shabbat, it is with an expectation that you will meet with Yahweh because he said he would meet with his people. Again, the Moedim, we find in Leviticus 23, it says, these are the appointed times of Yahweh, the very first of which is Shabbat. So these are appointed times when he said, I want to meet with you, and they're called holy convocations. A convocation is a public gathering. It's not something private. It's not something hidden. It is something public and involves more than you. So it is a public gathering, a public calling out place. And this is what Yahweh has called us to be a part of. We have a personal relationship with Yahweh, but because we have a personal relationship with Yahweh, we also need to have that personal relationship with each other. And these two things should work together in our life. So the Mishkan, what was the purpose of building the Mishkan? So that Yahweh may dwell among them. This is what he said. Build me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. Of course, the idea is to dwell within them, right? But build me this place, prepare the place, much like we prepare our hearts to meet with him. So consider this. Would it then make sense that they become so busy building the Mishkan that they forget why they're building it? Okay, guys, we got this building project. We're just going to do nothing but build for 6 months and not take Shabbat to stop from the building and the creating and focus on why we're doing it. It was every 6 days, now the 7th, you come in and refocus on the why. And that is what the Father called us to do. Much like this, do we put our relationship with Yahweh on hold when he said we are to meet with him and then try to justify it by saying we're doing it for him? Oh, I'm too busy with all these other things. I'm busy with the work and the life and all these other things, but yet don't forget the one who gave you the breath that you're breathing, the one who gave you the skills that you have, who put your hands to know what they know, who gave you the mind to comprehend it, who put the spirit and life within you for the whole purpose of your life. That's what Shabbat is for. It's a turn to refocus on that relationship. In Exodus 31, verse 14, okay, we're still going through this, right? Verse 14, therefore you are to keep my Shabbat. See that? You are to keep my Shabbat. I've heard some people say, well, my Sabbath is, guys, biblically speaking, that doesn't fly, okay? You can say I'm taking a break. You can say I'm taking time off. You can say I'm doing all, that's fine. But Yahweh called Shabbat a Shabbat. This is the 7th day. Every 7th day, it is Shabbat. And we can't change that. So while you can say, I'm taking time off, I'm taking a break, I'm taking, that's fine, but it's not Shabbat. Because Shabbat is stop working and refocus back on the Father by gathering. See that? And all of these things working together. So keep my Shabbat because it is set apart for you. Everyone who treats it as ordinary must be put to death. Whoever does any work on it is to be cut off from his people. On 6 days, work is to get done, but the 7th day is Shabbat for complete rest, set apart for Adonai. Whoever does any work on that day of Shabbat must be put to death. So note here, there's a couple things I want to point out here. One, says you are to keep my Shabbat, it is set apart for you. Then as you keep reading, it says, it is a time of complete rest. It is set apart for Yahweh. It is set apart for Adonai. So is it set apart for you, or is it set apart for Yahweh? Yes. Yahweh set it apart as a time that he designated that he would meet with his people. Therefore, it is set apart for you. Because who does he desire to meet with? Who does he desire to have a relationship with? Who does he desire to come in with? You. And so we stop our focus on living life in the world and refocus back on him. Who does Shabbat belong to? Belongs to Yahweh. Like we said in Leviticus 23, he said, these are the designated times, holy convocations, my designated times. Okay. Let's move another example. Let's talk about Yeshua in Mark chapter 2. Mark chapter 2, verses 23 through 28. Verse 23 starts, Now it happened on Shabbat that Yeshua was going through the grain fields, and his disciples began to make their way plucking the heads of grain. And the Pharisees were saying to him, Look, why are they doing what is not permitted on Shabbat? So my question is this. What were they saying was not permitted? Eating? Were you not allowed to eat on Shabbat? Of course you're allowed to eat on Shabbat. Were they forcing someone to go and to cook for all of them on Shabbat? No. What were they doing? Walking by grain, plucking a head, rubbing it between their hands, and eating it. Here's the thing. Is that work? No, not really. Can't say that's work. So they're not harvesting. They're not reaping. They're not sowing. They're just walking by, grabbing the snack. See, again, it's not what Yahweh said. It's our understanding of what Yahweh said. Okay, so, need to come back and take a look at this, Are they defiling Shabbat as they were saying? And, notice Yeshua didn't say, oh my goodness, they're defiling Shabbat. No, but he called them out on their thinking. He called them out on their mentality, the way they were approaching the issue. Yeshua never said they were wrong in what they were doing, but he said, I'm going to address your thinking on this. Okay. So again, what does he say? Now, verse 25. So he says to them, haven't you ever read what David did when he was in need? And he came, and he and those with him, and they were hungry. He entered the house of God when Abiathar was Kohen Gadol, and he ate the showbread, which is permitted only for the Kohanim to eat, and gave some even to those who were with him. So where is this, and what's the context of how all this happens? Right? Well, let's go back to it. 1 Samuel 21, verses 1 through 6. If you want the full context, read the chapter before and the rest of chapter 21. But David went to the town of Nob to see Ahimelech the priest, and Ahimelech trembled when he saw me. So why are you alone? And he asked, why is no one with you? Well, here's the thing, guys. David was fleeing Saul. He had just gotten through a time talking to Jonathan, saying, your dad is trying to kill me. And Jonathan, no, that can't be. That's not possible. But I'll find out for you. Guess what? He was right. He was trying to kill him. And so David was fleeing Saul, and he goes to this place of Nob, and he goes to Ahimelech the priest, because now he's got some men with him. He sends his men ahead, and he's by himself here, and he's like, I got all these people. I'm fleeing for my life, and I've got nothing. And I've got to feed me and these guys that are with me. So what are we going to do? Let me go talk to the priest. Okay, let me go talk and see what we can do here, because surely they have something that we can have, because surely the priest is for me and is going to help me out, right? Verse 2, 1 Samuel 21:2. So the king sent me on a private matter, David said. He told me not to tell anyone why I'm here, and I have told my men where to meet me later. David lied, okay? But he was protecting his life here, so what goes on. So now what is there to eat? Give me 5 loaves of bread or anything else that you have. So he's asking him for food, and the priest says, we don't have any regular bread, the priest replied, but there is the holy bread which you can have if your young men have not slept with any women recently. And don't worry, David replied, I never allow my men to be with women when they are on a campaign, and since they stay clean even on ordinary trips, how much more on this one? He's fleeing for his life. And since there was no other food available, the priest gave him the holy bread, the bread of the presence that was placed before Yahweh in the tabernacle. It had just been replaced that day with fresh bread. Okay, a couple things to point out here. Why would it matter if they had been with a woman? Because, again, in the things that were holy, you could only eat them if you were clean. All right? And so they've set apart times, set apart seasons. The bread, it was holy, so this was one thing. David's like, don't worry about that. It's not an issue. And so he gave it to him to allow. Now, here's the thing. It was only given for the priesthood to eat. So how could the priest in good conscience, give it to David. See? We'll get to that in a second. But also note that it says that the bread had just been replaced that day with fresh bread. When was fresh bread put out? In Leviticus 24:8 and 9, it says, every Shabbat, this bread must be laid out before Yahweh. The bread is to be received from the people of Israel as a requirement of the eternal covenant. The loaves of bread will belong to Aaron and his descendants, who must eat them in a sacred place, for they are most holy. It is the permanent right of the priest to claim this portion of the special gifts presented to Yahweh. So how could the priest then say in good conscience, okay, David, here, take this bread then? Could it possibly be that the priest inquired of Yahweh, is it okay to give David this bread? And Yahweh says, yeah, give him the bread. And why? Is it just a matter because it was David? Or is it because life was at stake? David had nothing to eat. These men that were with him, and if they didn't get food, of course they would perish. So what's going to happen here? And David says, I'm sure that the priests will make sure we don't die. And that's really what's coming on here. That's really what's happening here. But we do find a clue here. It doesn't say specifically, but we do find a clue here that it is quite possible that the priest did inquire of Yahweh on behalf of David. Because in 1 Samuel 22:13, when Saul came to the town, he came to Nob, he says, why have you conspired against me, you and the son of Jesse, and that you have given him bread and a sword, and have inquired of God for him, so that he has risen against me to lie in wait as of this day. So he says, you inquired on behalf of David. And it also says you gave him bread and a sword. How did he know this? Because one of Saul's servants were in the town, were there, and kind of saw what happened. And they went back and told the king. The king came, and ultimately it did lead to a slaughter. Saul killed many of the priests. Okay? And so this is it's terrifying, terrible story, guys. But the point we're getting here to today is regarding David and the bread here. So consider, why would the priest want to do this? David left. He didn't have anything. He says he didn't even have time to take a weapon. And it's interesting because the priest's like, okay, here, take this bread. And the only weapon I have here, the only thing I have is this sword that was Goliath's sword that you chopped his head off with. And David's like, all right, I'll take Goliath's sword. Wow. Just more food for thought, guys. So he goes and he rides off. And understand this, David had already been anointed by the prophet that he would replace Saul, that he would be the one who would stand as king. And if the priest had any knowledge of this at all, he would have sought to preserve David's life. Matter of fact, there is a principle in the Torah that the preservation of life supersedes any commandment. To save a life, if it's Shabbat, someone's in danger, you help him. Okay? If someone's in danger, it doesn't matter what day it is, you help him. Help preserve life. And that's the sanctity of life, is the thing that we are supposed to do. Leviticus 18:5 says, you are to observe my laws and rulings. If a person does them, he will have life through them. I am Adonai. Yahweh doesn't want us to have death in following him. He wants us to have life in following him. Leviticus 19:16 says, do not spread slanderous gossip among your people, and do not stand idly by when your neighbor's life is threatened. I am Yahweh. So he says, don't stand by when your neighbor's life is threatened. I believe this to be physically, spiritually, and emotionally, or people just talking, or actually someone coming at them. We cannot just stand by and just let it happen, right? Okay. Matthew's rendition of this gives us a little more information regarding this. Okay. So before we go back to Mark to finish the thoughts we have here, let's go to Matthew. Matthew 12, verses 3-8. So he says to them, have you not read what David did when he was hungry, and to those who were with him? How he entered the house of God, and he ate the bread of the presence, which is not lawful for him to eat, nor for those who were with him, but only for the priests. Or have you not read in the law how on Shabbat the priests in the temple profane the Shabbat and are guiltless? How so? How can the priest profane the Shabbat? How can the priest defile Shabbat and yet be blameless? Because they had to work in the temple. The people were coming and the people were worshiping, but someone had to take care of the offerings. Someone had to take care of the altar. Someone had to take care of the menorah. Someone had to take care. Aaron had to burn incense every day. The Tamid offerings. All this had to be done. So the priesthood were the ones who were given the task to do it, and it was done even on Shabbat. But that's it, guys. What they were doing is called avodah. Eved is a servant. Avodah is worship, but it's also work. It's also service. Okay. But yet when the priesthood was working, they were worshiping Yahweh. They were not worshiping and working on their own thing. They ceased the work of the 6 days to work on building relationship with Yahweh. Okay, let's go back. Matthew 12:6. I tell you, something greater than the temple is here. And if you had known what this means, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, you would have not, or you would not have condemned the guiltless. For the Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath. Okay. Now, Hosea 6:6 is what Yeshua quotes. He says, for I desire mercy, not sacrifices, knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. What does he mean by this? Does it mean, I'm going to tell you to bring these korbanot, bring these offerings, but I don't want them? Is that what's going on here? No, not really. What the emphasis of this is, you're bringing me these things, but your heart's not right. If your heart's not right, I don't want these things. It's not like, don't bring the things. It's like, make your heart right. Then come to me. And this was not a matter of salvation either, guys. It's not like, well, if you just do these things, then God will accept you. That's not it at all. Remember, we're talking about a people who were his. Okay, so we're not talking about redemption. We're talking about living life. We're talking about me daily just bringing my worship to Yahweh. Get our hearts right. Repent is the point. Get our hearts right, then come to him. If our observance of Torah leads us to the suffering of others, if our observance of the Torah leads us to do things to other people that are just harmful and hurtful, and not caring about their lifting their life to a place of benefit and a place of relationship with Yahweh, then we need to reevaluate our understanding. See, we are told to give mercy. We're told to keep life. That the value of life overrules not working on Shabbat. See, whatever we do, we're to preserve life. So building the Mishkan was important. But as important as that was, they were not to defile Shabbat. Again, the priestly service was permissible, but what was priestly service? The priestly service is not working your daily job. It is not going out to eat. It's not washing the car. It's not watching TV. You ceased all your work, all your things, your pursuits. You don't get a day off from service of Yahweh. On Shabbat, you stopped your pursuits to pursue him. That was the point we were looking at. Okay, back to Mark 2:23-28. Now we're in verse 27. He says, so he said to him, Shabbat was made for man and not man for Shabbat. So the Son of Man is Lord even of Shabbat. So what does this mean? Why do we do Shabbat? He has Lord of Shabbat. Shabbat made for man. Look at this. A couple more things. Exodus 31:16. The people of Israel are to keep Shabbat. That's Ushmaru. That's Shamar is the word there, to keep, to guard, to protect. And then to observe Shabbat. That's La'asot, to do through all their generations as a perpetual covenant. Perpetual is olam, which means continual, perpetual, forever. All right. But the point I want to make here is where it says to guard and keep and protect Shabbat and to observe Shabbat. We often say observe. What does it mean to observe? It's kind of a tricky word. To say to observe something, we can just say, I'm looking at it. But literally it says la'asot Shabbat. Asa is the word it means to do, to make. So he says to make Shabbat, to do Shabbat. How do you do? Stop. Think about that for a minute. It is causing us to literally and stop, putting in our minds to stop our things, to stop our ideas, our life, our way, our kingdom, and focus on building relationship with Yahweh and building that relationship in his kingdom. As an example, where was Yeshua on Shabbat? If he says the Shabbat doesn't matter, would Yeshua have honored it? And keep in mind, Yeshua had to have honored it because he is the Messiah, right? And he had to have kept the Torah, because if he had not kept it, then he would have profaned it. And the Torah command is gather on Shabbat, to rest, to cease from your working, and to gather. And where was Yeshua on Shabbat? Mark 1:21. They entered Capernaum, and on Shabbat, Yeshua went into the synagogue and began teaching. Mark 6:2. When the Sabbath day was come, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many hearing him were astonished. Wow. Luke 4:16. He came to Nazareth where he had been brought up, and look at this. As his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day, and he set up to read. Luke 4:31. And he came to Capernaum, the city of Galilee, and he taught them on Shabbat. So I like that one where it even says, and as his custom was, he went to the synagogue on Shabbat. Guys, here's the thing. We say Yeshua is our example and we're supposed to follow him, but we often forget a lot of the things that he did. We often want to go to the signs, wonders, and miracles and things like that, which is great, and don't discount that at all. But understand it's also the being with his people on Shabbat, hearing the Torah taught on Shabbat. That's what was done. And Yeshua never said, oh, don't do that. No, we don't do that. Matter of fact, his disciples gave just otherwise. His disciples affirmed to all people who were coming to faith and who were new at this in Acts 15, they were told, go to the synagogue on Shabbat to hear what the Torah says, because that's what Yeshua was teaching us. He wasn't teaching us something new or something different. He was teaching us how to walk it properly, right? Look, in Luke 6:6, came to pass on another Shabbat. He entered the synagogue and he taught. Luke 13:10, he was teaching in one of the synagogues on Shabbat. Go to Acts, talking about Shaul and one of his companions. They departed from Perga. They came to Antioch and Pisidia, and they went to the synagogue on Shabbat and sat down. Acts 13:44, on the next day, Shabbat came, and almost the whole city together to hear the word of God. Acts 15:21, James is speaking, for Moshe of old time has in every city of them that preach him, being read in the synagogues every Shabbat day. He's saying, go to the synagogue on Shabbat to hear the Torah. Acts 18:4, and he reasoned in the synagogue every Sabbath and persuaded the Jews and the Greeks. So gather with the assembly. Now, here's the thing, guys. If you do not have an assembly, I'm not picking on you, okay? I understand not everybody has places local where they can gather and to do things, but should it be our desire to gather with the people of Yahweh? Should we, seek this out? Should we try to pursue that anyway? It's my prayer, if you don't have that changes for you soon, okay? Because we do need that. It's something that was told to us. Leviticus 23:1-4 says they are holy convocations. These are public things. Acts 15:19-21, the Gentiles who turned to God, they were told to abstain from pollution of idols, fornication of things strangled, things from blood, and go to the synagogue on Shabbat to hear the Torah taught. So again, Shabbat is important because it is a reconnect for us between the things of this world and the things of the spiritual world. And back to Exodus 31, verse 17, it says, it is a sign between me and you, that the people of Israel forever, for 6 days Adonai made the heaven and earth. On the seventh day, he stopped working and rested. He stopped working and he ceased from his building. He says it is a sign. It is a sign of covenant. We covered in Ezekiel 20, verses 10-13, where he says, I gave them my commands and I taught them my laws, that I made keeping Shabbat a sign of the agreement, a sign of the covenant, to remind them I make them holy. See that? By keeping Shabbat, you are not saying, oh, see how holy I am, I keep the Sabbath. Nope, not it. Yahweh says you keep Shabbat to remind you he makes you holy. We're learning to walk in his ways. We're learning to walk in his righteousness. We're learning to do his word. Let me put it this way. We're learning to do the things that Yeshua did when we are properly looking at the Torah. Ezekiel 20:18-20. I warn the young people among them. Again, do not keep the laws your ancestors made. The things that your parents were telling you that were apart from my word, they moved away from me. I want you to return to the word and do what I say. This is what Yahweh was instructing, because he said, even Shabbat, it is a sign of the covenant and remind you, I am Yahweh your God. See that? In verse 20, he says, it is a sign of the covenant and it will remind you, I am Yahweh your God. If he is our God, Shabbat is a reminder that we are publicly professing, I don't serve myself. I serve him. He is my God. He is my Elohim. He is the one that I serve and I go to. Shabbat is a public declaration of who we belong to. Now, something else to keep in mind. Moshe is on the mountaintop, all right? And he is receiving the instruction. He is receiving the words of the Torah. He's receiving, as important as this is, because the people need this. They need to know how to walk with Yahweh as he is leading them into the promise, is doing these things. It is important. So it's important to understand this is the Torah. These are the things. And as important as that is, do not forget to stop your own ways, your own ideas, and how you think things need to be done. This is what Yahweh is instructing Moses. And as Moses is receiving this instruction, the people are at the base of the mountain building a golden calf. Do not pursue your own ways. Do not pursue your own thoughts. Stop all these things and pursue me. And the people are building a golden calf down there. Why? Why are they building the golden calf? Started because of fear, misunderstandings, and their own personal desires. They did not want what Yahweh wanted. They wanted to worship Yahweh their way and assemble for their ideas and their things that were contradictory to what Yahweh had said. Look at Exodus 32, verses 1 through 5. It talks about this. Starting in verse 1. When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron. They said, "Up, make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we don't know what's become of him." So if they were gathering together, that's good, right? Nope, because they were gathering together for not the right thing. Their focus was not on Yahweh or serving him or anything that he was giving or his word or his spirit or his life or nothing like that. It was on gathering themselves together to make their own gods. This is how I want to serve God. And so as they gather together, kahal, this is to convoke, to assemble together. And in Exodus 23:2, it says, "Do not follow the crowd when it does what's wrong. And do not allow the popular view to sway you into offering testimony for any cause if the effect will be to pervert justice." So the people said together, they said, "Up, Aaron, kum, rise, Aaron, rise, and make us Elohim." Asa, it's that word make, and to do lanu Elohim, to make for us Elohim. Because Moses, this man, you notice now he's not Moses, the man of God, and Moses who Yahweh spoke to, Moses who led us out. No, Moses, this guy who we don't like right now, so we're going to pretend that God didn't speak to him, right? So because of this guy, we don't know what happened to him. See, he brought us out, and we were brought up. He says we were brought up, right? Alanu, we were brought up, but we don't know what happened to him. And literally it says, lo yidanu, so and we don't know mahiyalo. We don't know of what's happened to him. We don't know. So there's a thing. They were unsure of what was going on with Moses, so they did their own thing because it wasn't what they expected to see, and it was taking too long, and it just wasn't right, and so they wanted to do their own thing. And then Exodus 32, verse 2. So Aaron says to them, "Take off the rings of gold that are in your ears of your wives, your sons, your daughters, and bring them to me." And all the people took off the rings of gold that were in their ears and brought them to Aaron, and he received the gold from their hand and fashioned with it the graving tool, and he made a golden calf. And they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it, and Aaron made a proclamation and said, "Tomorrow shall be a feast to Yahweh." Wow, first off, there's a lot there. Aaron formed the golden calf. There's vayitzer. Yitzar is the word for form. It's also the word in Genesis 6:5 where it says imagination. And God saw the wickedness that man that was great in the earth, that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Yotzer can also be translated better sometimes as inclination. The things we are inclined to do are not for God or his righteousness or his word. If we are inclined to do our own thing, that's what we're looking at. Okay. And so he says, we don't know what's going on. And so they made this golden calf, and Aaron did one better. The people said, "This is Elohim Israel who came and let us out," and all this, right? Aaron made an altar before it and said, "Tomorrow we're going to have a feast to Yahweh, Hag Yahweh." So in essence, he's saying, we're going to worship this golden calf, and he called it Yahweh as we have this altar, and we're going to worship Yahweh our way by doing this. And that just can't happen. You just can't do that. Okay. So interesting that before and after the golden calf, we can see the command to keep Shabbat. Why would the command to keep Shabbat bookcase the sin of the golden calf? If you go and you read the story before and after the golden calf, it talks about Shabbat. Why? Why would that command bookcase it? Because on Shabbat, we stop pursuing the price of things and start focusing on the value of things. It's not about working the things in the week or pursuing our own desires or doing what things cost or whatever. We got the 6 days for that. But in the seventh day, we see the true value of everything. Everything of this earth will go away. Everything of this earth will pass away. The things that are of really value are the things that are eternal and things that will stand forever. Shabbat is to teach us that. So after the golden calf, Moshe intercedes on Israel's behalf. He comes back to Yahweh. And Exodus 33, 13 and 14, he says, "Now then I pray, if I have found grace in your eyes, show me your ways that I may know you, so that I might find favor in your sight, consider also this nation as your people. My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest, he answered. Now, there's a lot that happened in between the golden calf and here, but the point I want to make here is Moshe is interceding for the people, much like we have Yeshua to intercede for us, right? To intercede on our behalf. And it says, if Scripture says, if we sin, right, which we do, it says, so we do have an advocate who goes to the Father for us. This is Yeshua. And then Yahweh answers, my presence will go with you, and I will give you rest. Nuach is the word used there for rest. What are we supposed to do on Shabbat? To cease from our work and to rest. Let's look at Hebrews 4, 1 through 11 really quick. It says, therefore, let us fear lest perhaps a promise having been left to enter into his rest, that any of you may seem to come short. For indeed we have had the gospel preached to us, even as they also. But the word did not profit those hearing it, not having been mixed with faith in the ones who heard. For we, the ones believing, enter into the rest, even as he said, as I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter into my rest, though the works had come into being from the foundation of the world. For he has spoken somewhere about the seventh day, this way, and God rested from all his works in the seventh day. Verse 5, and in this again, they shall not enter my rest, quoting Psalm 95:11. Therefore, since it remains for some to enter into it, see that? It remains for some to enter into it, and those who formerly had the gospel preached did not enter on account of disobedience, he again marks out a certain day, saying in David, today, after so long a time, according as he has said, today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts, quoting from Psalm 95. For if Joshua gave them rest, then he would not have afterwards spoken about another day. See, so Yeshua brought them into the land. That's not the rest he's talking about. Verse 9, so then there remains a Sabbath rest to the people of God. For he entering into his rest, he himself also rested from his works as God rested from his own. Therefore, let us exert ourselves to enter into that rest, that not anyone fall into the same example of disobedience. Let us, what's it say? Exert ourselves that we can enter into the rest. Work so that you can enter into the rest. You work in the 6 days, you do this thing so that in the seventh you can stop that working and start focusing on the eternal things and building these things there. Yeshua puts it this way, Matthew 11:28, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you what? Rest. He doesn't say, come to me and you're never going to have to work ever again. He didn't say, come to me and you're never going to have to worry about having a job. He didn't say, come to me and you're not going to have any bills. He didn't say any of that. He said, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, I will give you rest. Resting in him is learning to build his kingdom, learning to walk with him. You're not alone. And that's part of this coming together. You're not alone. But it's not just about being in the same place with other people. It's about surrendering ourselves to be a part of that community and helping to build that. And that's an effort that we all need to be able to learn and grow in, have that relationship with Yahweh and have this relationship with his people as well. Verse 29, it says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. See that? It's not a lack of problems. It's just there's turmoil around you, but you can have peace. It's that peace that passes understanding. He's called the Prince of Peace, right? So it's that peace that passes understanding. As we come to him and we learn to live with him and walk with him, this is how we live life. And that's the example that we're supposed to have so that others can follow, right? Okay, guys, that's all I got for you today. I hope this has been an encouragement to you. I also hope it's challenged you. And if it has, it's blessed you, share it. Okay, on whatever avenue you share or watch, whatever it may be, share these teachings to help get them out there. If it's blessed you, it'll bless somebody else. So help get them out to do that. And if it has blessed you, please consider making a donation to help us keep these videos going out. All right, it does cost us to do them. It does cost us to make them and to keep them running in the platforms and everything else. So if it has blessed you, please consider making a donation to help us keep these things moving along too. All right. So until next time, be blessed, be a blessing, and shalom.